My name is Detective Caleb Ryan. I've been with the force for 15 years, and I've seen my fair share of ugly. But when I was called to the Langford Hotel that morning, I knew this one would stick with me. The victim was Emily Raines, a rising star in Hollywood. 27 years old, strikingly beautiful, and known for her breakout role in Falling Grace. Now, she was headline news for all the wrong reasons. The scene in room 814 was eerily pristine, considering what had happened. Emily lay on the bed, her body unnaturally still, her face pale. There was no sign of a struggle, no forced entry. Just her lifeless body and a hotel room that felt too quiet, too perfect. The only hint that something was off was a shattered wine glass on the nightstand, crimson wine pooling next to an untouched bottle. Witnesses claimed she was last seen in the hotel bar the night before, sitting with a man no one recognized. Tall, dark-haired, well-dressed, that was all they could recall. The security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned, leaving us with nothing but vague descriptions and a sense of unease. Whoever this man was, he knew how to cover his tracks. Her diary was found in the bedside drawer, a sleek leather-bound book with a broken clasp. Flipping through its pages, I found entries that painted a picture of a woman juggling fame and fear. There were cryptic lines about a secret rendezvous and a man she referred to only as H. Then there were the threats. One entry read, "He won't leave me alone. Every time I think he's gone, he finds me again. I can't live like this." Another simply said, "If something happens to me, look at him." But she never named names, and the entries stopped abruptly a week before her death. Detective Ryan, a uniformed officer, called from the doorway, breaking my focus. "We found something in the trash chute. You'll want to see this." I followed him down to the basement, where a black plastic bag sat on a metal table. Inside was a blood-stained scarf, a broken cufflink, and a crumpled napkin with a lipstick mark and the words "Meet me at 10" scrawled in bold letters. It was a clue, but it was also a taunt, a breadcrumb trail left deliberately, or so it felt. Emily's manager, Nicole Hart, arrived at the station later that day. She was a sharp-dressed woman in her 40s, her expression a blend of grief and suspicion. Emily was private, she said, lighting a cigarette despite the no-smoking signs. She didn't share much, but I knew about the man. She was infatuated. Said he was different, but I told her. Fame attracts all kinds of predators. "Did she ever tell you his name?" I asked, watching her closely. Nicole exhaled a plume of smoke. "No. Just that he made her feel alive. But a week ago, she seemed off. Paranoid. She thought someone was following her. I begged her to stay with me, but she said she could handle it." As the hours stretched into days, the pieces of Emily's life began to surface. Her co-stars spoke of her ambition, her charm. The hotel staff remembered her as polite, if a bit guarded. And then there were the fans. Hundreds of messages flooded her social media, many adoring, some unsettlingly possessive. One account stood out, at Forever Rains, a user who posted obsessive tributes and chilling comments about protecting her from the wrong people. I tracked the account to a man named Greg Wallace, a 29-year-old freelance photographer. His apartment was a shrine to Emily. Posters, framed magazine covers, and a wall of candid photos that could only have been taken without her knowledge. When I brought him in for questioning, his hands trembled as he insisted he loved her, that he would never hurt her. "I just wanted to keep her safe," he said, eyes darting around the room. She didn't understand how dangerous people can be. I tried to warn her about him. "About who?" I pressed. Greg hesitated, his face pale. "I don't know his name. But he wasn't good for her. I saw them together once. At a cafe. He was older, had this intensity about him." She looked scared, but she told me to leave it alone. The problem was, Greg's alibi checked out. He had been working a gig across town the night Emily died. Another dead end, or so it seemed. Back at my desk, I stared at the crime scene photos and the diary entries spread before me. Something wasn't adding up. Emily's world was one of glamour and ambition, but it was also a world of manipulation, jealousy, and secrets. The man she trusted, the threats she feared, the carefully placed evidence, it all felt like pieces to a puzzle I couldn't yet see clearly. Then the lab results came back on the scarf. The blood was Emily's, but the fibers didn't match anything in her room. And the cufflink bore an engraved insignia that sent a chill down my spine, an insignia tied to a powerful family with a reputation for keeping their skeletons well hidden. The break came in the form of an overlooked detail. Going back over the crumpled napkin, I noticed faint, smudged fingerprints that weren't immediately picked up in the initial sweep. Forensics pulled a match. A man named Harrison Wells, the estranged son of a wealthy real estate tycoon, Victor Wells. Harrison had been in the tabloids a decade ago for a string of public scandals before retreating from the limelight. Tracking him down wasn't easy. He lived off the grid, moving between properties owned by his father's vast empire. A warrant and some persuasion finally put him in the interrogation room, where he sat across from me, his demeanor cold and calculated. "You've made a mistake," he said, leaning back with a smirk. "I didn't kill Emily." "But you knew her," I said, sliding the cufflink across the table. His jaw tightened, a tell he couldn't suppress. "I knew her. We had a thing. But it ended weeks ago." "She wrote about you," I countered, opening her diary to an entry describing a meeting with H. "She was afraid of you." "That's absurd," he snapped, his composure cracking. "She wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid of someone else. Some lunatic fan. She told me about him." "Greg Wallace?" I asked. "No," Harrison said, shaking his head. "Someone more dangerous. She wouldn't name him, but she said he was powerful. Said he wouldn't let her go." As much as I wanted to pin it all on Harrison, something in his eyes made me pause. He was arrogant and slimy, but was he lying? Then Nicole Hart came forward with a bombshell. "Emily was meeting Victor Wells the night she died," she confessed. "She told me she had leverage on him. She wanted out of Hollywood, out of everything, and he offered her a deal. But I warned her not to trust him. Victor Wells had a spotless public image, but whispers of his darker dealings had followed him for years. When I confronted him, he played the role of a grieving philanthropist to perfection. Emily was a lovely girl," he said, his voice dripping with sincerity. "I offered her guidance. That's all." "Guidance doesn't explain the cufflink, the threats in her diary, or the fact that she's dead," I said. Victor's mask slipped for just a second, a flash of irritation crossing his face. "You have no proof," he said quietly. "But the proof was in the details." Forensics tied the fibers from the scarf to the upholstery in Victor's private jet. Witnesses placed him in the Langford Hotel bar that night, and Harrison, eager to save himself, admitted his father had ordered him to leave town after Emily's death. In the end, it wasn't just about Emily. She'd uncovered something deeper, a tangled web of corruption and exploitation tied to Victor's empire. Her death wasn't just a crime of passion. It was a calculated move to silence her before she could expose the truth. Victor Wells was arrested, but his wealth and influence meant the trial would be a long, drawn-out battle. Still, Emily's story wouldn't be buried, not this time. As I left the precinct that night, I couldn't shake the weight of it all. Emily's life, her dreams, her fears, they were all wrapped up in a world that had chewed her up and spit her out. Some cases stick with you, and this one would haunt me for a long time. But at least, for Emily, there was some justice in the end.